This is a shift that I've seen. We used to be like, let's go get reviews on Facebook. Let's go get reviews on Trustpilot, because those felt like the place where you go for digital reviews. Now I'm like, nah, just do Google. Google all the way. Let's go back in time.
It's one of my favorite things to do with you, Matt, is go back and how it all started, but what's different today, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's a reflection here. Yeah, we'll do a little bit of story time, and I want to hit some like key differences that I see in the space and how we're responding to those. And so when it comes to just marketing, here we are, it's 2024. If I think back to the first time I was conscious of marketing, I give credit to 2016, but I think it was actually like the end of 2015. And it was this. We had, started business in 2012. And for the first 3 years, almost 4 years, because it was like the start of 2012, we were basically just referral-based. It was like very relational and referral-based. And we had some strategic referral partners, and it was also like a very small pond. So we were just web dev, and there was basically one other option in Malibu. And I was like, well, this is going to be great. Like just one of two. And I'll say this is a great entry-level strategy is when people get established and big, it's hard to reach them. I think people sometimes probably feel this way about me. It's like, it's hard to reach them. And so just be the more reachable, the more approachable, the person who's like, hey, let's go. It's like, I have no customers, so I'll go surfing with you. I'll go to lunch with you. Like I will talk to everybody and network my face off because I clearly I don't have a lot of customers. I'm not that busy. And so that was the playbook there. But I never even thought of the word marketing. And it wasn't until the actual shift was, I was like, we should provide marketing, because it felt like what we were providing was a nice to have, not a need to have. And I had this situation where everybody said, we'll start in, January 1. They wanted to push off all their new projects into the new year. And I was not good at sales. So I couldn't be like, no, put it on this year's budget as a write-off. I didn't think of any of that. I was just like, that sounds good. We'll start in January. So then I was like, we need to learn marketing. And I dove into needing to learn marketing. So between 2016, which I would not say we didn't like, that was early days, and 2024, all the wide differences and big shifts between what we started out with and what's kind of working now. One that was surprising to me, and I've recently been showcasing this. So early on, we had this shift or this belief. It was like, we learned reviews were important. Social proof was a critical factor. If I had to take like one of the basic things that I grabbed onto that it served us well, is I was like, oh, that makes sense. If you just are good at gathering social proof, your marketing will be easier. And just getting reviews, because it was this concept that we psychologically, we can't adequately discount the endorsement of a stranger. That was the perspective I learned it through. So actually at the same time, I was also like in that same year, I was like, I should do an MBA. So I was like, I did an MBA at UCLA. That was when I started the MBA process there. And all these things were shifting, but I was like, I felt like we had accomplished some things, but I felt like I was accidental. I was like, I should learn business, not just, I'd taken business undergrad classes, but not an MBA. But I'll give credit to this class that was taught, and it was a psychologist teaching business. And that was one of the things, was you can't adequately discount the endorsement of a stranger. And I actually love this topic. And I'm retelling someone else's thing. It's like, imagine, your mom says, these are the best tacos. You're like, okay, I know my mom's preferences. Like, oh, that's taco. And then 100 strangers say, these are the best tacos. Like, you should be like, I don't know any of your taste buds. I don't know if you like the same type of taco that I like. So we inherently try to discount it, but we can't. We just can't help it. Like, we're like, okay, mom's endorsement is like, 90%. We're like, complete strangers is like this much.
It's crazy. I'm seeing the opposite of this, and it's finally hitting me for the first time. Have you ever seen like where you've given someone that advice over and over, and then they hear it from a stranger and they're like, I'm going to do it? This is the opposite of that, right? This is the positive side of it, if you will. They don't know how to discount it. If it's someone that you know all the time, you know all their flaws, their negatives, right? But so you have a bias that isn't always positive. That's fascinating.
Yeah. And so it's our inability to appropriately weight the information that we receive between sources that we're very familiar with, very trustworthy, and sources that we have no business trusting at all. It's a weird heuristic. We're just like, we're such communal people, and like people are communal. And so we've survived by being very trusting of the stranger. We just assume they've kind of got our best interests in there. And especially we try to create circles of trust that like don't really mean anything. You're like, you live in the same city as me, instant trust. And you're like, what? They could be a criminal in your same city, but they're in my city. And you speak the same language as me. It's like, that means nothing. There are probably way safer people that are in different cities that speak different languages, but you just associate the trust. So that's going on inside of us. So I grabbed on this idea of social proof. I was like, okay, we got to do this. I know this. But then it's like, where do you gather that social proof? And so I learned it was like Google Business, key for brick and mortar business. Like that was the thing. And then we had this like, when we moved into the digital space. So for let's say 2016 to 2018, really 2019, we were all brick and mortar. We marketed for ourselves and focused on helping brick and mortar businesses get reviews or just be better marketing. And it was always Google. We understood that. When we went into the digital space, it was like, well, where do we get reviews now? It's like Google's for brick and mortar businesses. So then we started saying like, well, it's got to be Trustpilot. It's got to be Facebook. It's like we associated with all these other platforms of like, that's the best place to get reviews. I would say that's a shift in my recommendations now. I think every digital business should have a Google business profile. And that's where you should get all of your reviews, because here's what we've seen. Google was happy for a second to be just the brick and mortar guys with their maps pages. And now they are pushing more and more so into like for branded search, which is a lot of times that's what like the gut check is. You're never going to show up. It's not often that someone's going to say like, you know, best, whatever it is. Like your social proof in the digital space is not important because they're like, who's got the best course, and they're like actually evaluating two different courses. They're not doing that. They're gut checking you. You ran a paid ad. They saw your brand, and now they're going to Google. They're like, well, what's out here about you? I just saw this example, so I compared it to a software. If you listen to my other podcast, there's a very popular software I talk about a lot. And so if you search them, they did this for their Google business profile, and they have thousands. I think it was 1,500 5-star reviews. Phenomenal. I searched a competitor, a much bigger competitor, and nothing is there. They don't have a Google business profile. They're like, oh, we just didn't even try it. They have nothing. And you have to scroll down to like rank 25 before you see like their reviews on like G2 or Trustpilot or something like that. And so this is a shift that I've seen. Is we used to be like, I fell into that. I was like, oh, let's go get reviews on Facebook. Let's go get reviews on Trustpilot, because those felt like the place where you go for digital reviews. If you're a software, if you're a service provider, it's like, go there. Now I'm like, nah, just do Google. Google all the way.
What's so interesting about that is it plays into the same bias, right? Of the fact that the average person already gives Google credibility. So a 5-star review on Google ranks higher to our subconscious than a 5-star review on Trustpilot. We don't know Trustpilot, the average consumer.
Or Capterra. And so so all of these like specialist review sites, which I say like kind of fell into, like we were doing that. I realize in hindsight, I wish I had just done all Google, because what ends up happening is Google prioritizes their own stuff. And now if you compare, if I was going competitor in those two examples, I'll say the other one, it was Active Campaign. So I was searching, like you search Active Campaign, Google gives them a little like profile. Like they're not without like the same little blurb spot, but there's nada in terms of reviews. And now it's like, hey, if I'm choosing between software A, software B, software A, I immediately in the first fold see all of these 5-star reviews. I'm like, that feels great. Software, alternative, I see no reviews. You're like, this is weird. Like Google, I guess no one's reviewed it. It comes off like they have no reviews, and it's just they don't have reviews on Google. So this is one of those big shifts for us, is that we are now actively trying to get more reviews on Google, because I'm like, this is the game, because it doesn't matter if we have, I think we've got 500 positive reviews, and you're like, and I think we have like 10 on Google. You're like, darn it. And that's perception is reality. You go there and you're like, and I guess they're horrible because they only have 10. And so we've fallen victim to the same thing that we used to help brick and mortar business. I guess we still do help brick and mortar businesses with. And so that's one thing I said. Now I just tell everybody, if you're, I don't care, whatever it is, create a Google business profile. Google sometimes they'll kind of reject businesses. I think they're still filtering on some level of like, they want to know you are like have a place of business. The interesting thing is they don't care it's a minor distinction. So it's like, give it an address. You can actually hide your address from Google, but like they don't care. For example, there are softwares in Dallas. You're like, it says software company in Dallas. You don't have to be like, I'm searching that brand. So it's more so helping you when it comes to your own branded search, which is
people that are further down the decision process, and that where actually now they even have, they're actually looking for confirmation.
That's exactly
or
right.
reasons to say no.
Yep.
And so that it increases the importance because they're closer to saying yes.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one shift that we've made, and just working that uphill battle to gather those reviews in that place. Another shift I'd say is from its content perspective, even more so. It's only increased in necessity, if that makes sense. And here's an interesting thing that I was listening to, forgetting the name. Well, I was listening to somebody else smarter than me, so I'll give credit there. I don't know who I'm giving credit to, but he was talking about the shift in the next generation.
Okay.
So he was actually talking about it from the perspective of hiring and team development. But so he was reflecting on, if you rewind back like 50 years ago, people had, you had a larger percentage would go to church. You had a larger percentage in like bowling leagues. You had a larger percentage, like they did neighborhood block parties. And so it was, he would say like work was work. Like the agreement was, I'm going to be loyal to you and you're going to help me fund my life. And that was kind of the expectation there. It's like, as a company, like you are fiscally responsible to ensure that I can progress in my job and opportunity. But I'll come, like, I'm not looking for you to fill all my things. And he was just observing that the trend is, okay, you got, bowling leagues don't exist. Church attendance is down. People not as connected to their neighborhoods and a lot more isolated. And so then what happens is all that responsibility gets put back on the business as the employer. But then I also think as the business, and you see this, more people judging the business, not based on like, do you make a good product? It's like, do you give me purpose? Do you align with my politics? Do you align with my values? Do you actually create community for me? And so he was saying, it's like, it's not a good or bad. It can sound like we're saying it's bad. That's not what it is. It's just an observation of this is what it is. So as a business, I think that's part of an exponential shift there. And you see that in the media, not like media, but like social media, and how content is observed and related to. And so even more so from a marketing, if you think about marketing, connecting people to other people that have something to sell. It's not just about, is your product good? You're judged even more so on character, on, I'd say, politics, on purpose, on all these other things where just culturally, people are less filled in more traditional areas. And so they're looking for, like I said, purpose and belonging and community and whatever it might be from a business, where they used to be looking for it, expecting it in other areas, and they wouldn't expect that from a business. And so, and I think the other side, there's the other observation they made, and this is a generalization, so it's not true in all cases, but I think we've seen and experienced this, is the emotional professionalism is less and less, if that makes sense. And so, not good or bad, it's just an observation. So you will see, and I'd say, like, if you go back 50 years, I don't think you would have a customer that says, hey, can I get a refund? My girlfriend cheated on me and I've just been in a really hard spot. Right? But that happens. Like, that absolutely happens. That's part of the conversation. And that goes, it's just a cultural shift. And I feel like I've already seen all of those things increase even in the last, I'm saying 2016 to 2024. So it's eight years there. They were making, like I said, it was, you know who it was? One of my favorites. It was Simon Sinek. I think it was Simon Sinek who was talking about
Sounds like him. These are very economical statements.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was, just very marketplace observations there. But I'd say that's been a shift in our marketing. So really what it means is now that, it is bad marketing if you miss out on these areas.
Okay. I like that.
And so look at your marketing. It's like, if you don't if you aren't approachable, if you aren't connectable to even a less emotionally professional level, you will seem distant and judgmental. If you aren't communicating or making it very clear that there's purpose beyond the product, you are heartless. If you are not focused on cultivating and being a place of community, people will unsubscribe for loneliness. These are just observations, and I think a different approach to what we take here. And so, like I'd say, like in the last, it's only been 2 years maybe now, where we introduce a community component to everything that we do, and you'd be like, why? It's like this observation, and I'd say through feedback, some people are like, I stay just for the community, and you're like, oh wow, like it's just an observation. So it's not about, and in the same way, I think people resonate. So people have always resonated with these things. They've just been filled in other categories in the past. And so I think less and less so, those are filled in those other areas that, like I said, no bowling leagues, less attendance at church, almost no or very little block parties or community, neighborhood parties, stuff like that. And so more of that responsibility is placed on businesses. And so as you're marketing, you need to be conscious of what are folks finding value in and where do they need to find value? And that's where it gets back to like those levers of value, which I've talked about on previous shows of just sometimes in the if you're a business tool or like you're marketing, if you're marketing, I guess that's what you're selling is marketing, then you want to make the exchange of like, buy my thing or my service and you make more money. You think that should be a fair exchange. But in actual value on their life, it's probably sixth in line at least. And it's these other areas that are actually more valuable to them. And so if you can introduce those aspects, you'll have higher retention, higher willingness to pay.
That makes sense. I think it's a really interesting perspective just in terms of marketing, just to be looking at what the trends, not of like marketing trends and not even consumer trends, but community trends. How are people interacting differently now than they did 10 years ago? And I think these are three really good ones that you bring up. And whether there's not a specific thing to go do, I think just being mindful of that in your business. How are people interacting in the world? And is my business in alignment with how they currently want to be interacted with?
Yeah. And I know you just said we don't have to have a practical takeaway. If you're going to have a practical takeaway, I'll give you this. It's hard, but I think it's worthwhile, is there are ways to lead with community. And now you've got tools that make it super easy to just lead with community. Like I said, hard, but worthwhile. Because that's, even in small businesses, that's really the baby form of branding. And that's kind of like in large forms, that's where you get like there used to be clubs and they'd create these collective big initiatives to create community in certain places. Now you can do it very easily digitally. It's just like it's a community, and make that the first point of introduction to your brand. Join the community for free. And like I said, not saying it's easy, but it is worthwhile.
Yeah, I like it a lot.